Right. Well, hey, I want to welcome my newest guest here, Mr. Michael Brewer, who I'll let him introduce himself, but from what I can see here, he's the executive director, head of cybersecurity, chief information security officer at Neurocrine Biosciences. And before we do anything, I want to understand how that even fits on a business card.
Well, thanks for having me, Travis. Yeah, it's definitely a mouthful. It gets shortened to CISO,
Oh,
the business card, but yeah, sometimes titles just start to grow a life of their own inside of a company.
yeah, yeah, no, it's pretty wildly long, but it must be important. It's an important role. So, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit to the audience here, Michael, and tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Neurocrine.
Sure. So I've been working in cybersecurity for about 24 plus years. Standard story, as most people have, starting out as a hands-on keyboard administrator to engineer to architect to cybersecurity and now to CISO. Kind of been working in the cybersecurity realm long before cybersecurity was even a term that people used. And it's just kind of been a natural progression here. I'm working on establishing a cybersecurity program, maturing our efforts, looking at policies and procedures, tool sets, contracts, relationships, data, just the full gambit that you would look to work on for a CISO role.
Well, that's pretty cool. What was it that drove you to even get into cyber or information security in the first place?
Well, I actually can remember the exact point. So I was deployed overseas and I was establishing some network connections. And I didn't like the way that certain connections were being pushed out. And so I started putting ACL rules, access control lists on
Any, right? Is
hardware.
that what you did?
That's exactly right. Just let everybody go do whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I got into a very heated argument with somebody that was my senior.
Yeah.
And I was actually able to get them to concede that the way that I was doing was a better, more secure way of doing business. So at that point, my ego was thoroughly stroked, and I felt like this was the path that I wanted to go down.
Interesting. And about approximately what age were you at that time?
Oh, geez, 18, 19.
Wow. Okay. So like really, really early on, you were like, security is it. Because
Yeah.
I know for me, from a tech perspective, I've been doing tech a long time as well. Not that security wasn't important, but it wasn't as intriguing to me early on. It was just like, yeah, we got to deal with this. So that's, pretty impressive that you figured that out at 18, 19. Definitely you're ahead of the game there, which I guess makes sense uh, why you ended up where you are. And it also answers some of my next question that I had, which was, how did your time in the military really shape your career in tech?
Well, I don't know if I can map to the process and the day-to-day schedule and the regiment that actually refined my security preference for my career, but I think most of it is just kind of being exposed to the overall physical security and the logical security, how those two things play together. So being deployed outside the United States, you get briefed pretty regularly on um, human trafficking, on threats, on general criminal environments to stay away from, or certain areas to stay away from, and why you want to stay away from them. And so, we start looking at, hey, we have people breaking in through doors, breaking in through windows, people trying to social engineer to come on site to say that they're a cleaning crew to try and get access to these things. So kind of just snowballs the general thought process with me is like, okay, well, what are they trying to get access to? Why are they trying to get access to? How are they trying to get access to? And kind of going through those threat scenarios, it's something that I thoroughly enjoy. And the military gives you a unique perspective and a unique control base to pull from. So, for example, I was working on unmanned vehicles and how we would get the communications encrypted from one end to another end. And a viable control is blow it up. So if somebody gets on an unmanned ship, how are you going to ensure that they can't get access to sensitive data?
Oh, wow.
Blow up the ship, right? If somebody opens the door, that sets off explosions, right? So it's a very cool control to have that you don't get to on the corporate side.
Yeah. Blowing things up doesn't happen intentionally very often. For the folks listening to this, I've known Michael for a couple years. We got a chance to work together at a former employer, which was pretty cool. And we were actually on a team of what we called Labs Fellows, where we got a chance to take a look at kind of what was behind the curtain with emerging technology. Curious, Mike, did your time as a fellow alter your views in any way on, the technology ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, or anything like that?
Absolutely. It gave a perspective on, not just how new tech comes to market, but really how it comes from an idea to a concept to something in the market. So I never was exposed to the idea of design partners. I always just kind of had that, beta tester kind of idea, but there's really value in a company that has not really a niche problem, but just a problem that maybe the bigger companies out there just aren't going to deal with, right? And I'm dealing with this right now with this company, is that we have a couple products out there that, larger DLP companies or data categorization companies just aren't even playing, right? So now we're talking with startups to say, look, this is a core tool set that we need to have for this core business process, this capability. Can you help us get, the larger DLP functionality, but for this thing? And they're very excited to help out, right? Because we are just one of many in this market that is generally just being overlooked by the bigger competitors. So I think, that perspective was extremely helpful. Also, just learning the right terminology, right? Like, I don't want to be a beta tester, but I can be a design partner. Kind of the same thing, but it sells better to senior leadership, right?
Certainly.
Beta tester kind of has that negative connotation of, well, we're kind of hoping this thing's going to work, versus it's working, but now we're refining it for how we want it to work in the environment.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Did it help you vet? Does it help you vet these companies? Being exposed to as many companies as we were in that program, I think for me it helps me vet. But did it change the way you look at their product or their financial stability, anything like that?
The financial stability was another new aspect, coming again from my lineage of more technical up into this position. Being able to look at the viability of the company, not just the viability of the tech, is very critical. The tech itself, it's really like buying a car, right? You buy what's on the lot, not what's promised. And so with the tech, it's, validate, show me, let me see the back end, let me see the reports. I don't like scoping calls. I don't like talking to salespeople. I don't know of many people that do, because I just want to, see what's in reality. There's a lot of big companies out there that'll, do a dog and pony show, and they'll show you this great automated workflow and how you do this one little thing and it does these 10 other things automatically, but they omit the fact that you have to have an army of consultants to get you from out of the box to that point.
Yeah.
Or that, what they showed had this back end of other functionality you need to go buy to make that work. And so identifying where things are omitted or hand waved over is pretty critical. And being part of the labs kind of gave you that open conversation, because they knew, that's what this was, right? This wasn't a conversation to be sold on something. This was a conversation to see if it was viable for our customers.
I want to change directions just slightly. I don't know what your role is exactly in Bsides, and I would love to know more about your role and love to know more about Bsides. I know you've got an event coming up, which unfortunately I will be out of town for, so I couldn't join. But yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. So our event is happening on March 30th. We are sold out. We will have a couple of tickets to sell on site, but they're already getting spoken for very, very quickly. So it's a cybersecurity event that we put on in San Diego for San Diego companies, for San Diego focused market spaces. And we try to theme our talks to subjects that are important to the San Diego business areas. For those that aren't familiar with Bsides, it's a global group, very loosely connected. So there is no mothership Bsides that dictates how things happen, who what the themes are, who can do what. So for me, I'm the president of Bsides San Diego. I revitalized Bsides San Diego, so it actually went dormant for some time, and I worked with uh, the the previous board that they had that had disbanded to stand up the new nonprofit, take over the name, take over the domain, and kick it off. I've been doing this since 2018, I believe.
Wow.
And yeah, we're really excited about this year. We're going to be at San Diego State University. We have a massive footprint. So the theater, two training sessions, the large Montezuma Hall, which can house, I think, over 2,000 people. And it's just going to be a great time to be able to learn what's latest and greatest in cybersecurity, computer security, IT in general, but also get some hands-on experience to be able to learn how to pick locks, how to hack Wi-Fi, how to solder, how to do hardware hacking, how to do tamper evident hacking. So that one's always a gray area, but you have tamper protection that you put on shipping containers or on envelopes to say, like, if this seal has been broken, something's happened. Well, we're showcasing the vulnerabilities in these things and how you can actually open these and show that you can get access to things and still show that there was not, those tamper evident things weren't tampered with. Uh,
That's crazy. I didn't know you guys did all that stuff.
yeah,
Now I'm
so
even more
it's a
bummed
lot
that I
of
won't be able to go.
Yeah, it's a lot of hands-on. So we really want to be able to, educate everybody on what these vulnerabilities are with the intent that they can be fixed later, right? So we can't fix what we don't talk about. That's what I really like about B-Sides and just the security community in general, right? There is a lot of ego in, hey, I've compromised this thing or I found this bug bounty, but ultimately it's to fix it so that way somebody can't do something nefarious with it.
Wow. Wow. That's exciting. That's cool. I'm definitely going to try to come next year if you let me get a ticket. And
I'll
yeah,
save one for you.
yeah, sounds good. What sort of threats are you dealing with most typically in this role, or are you lucky and are there none?
If only, right? So they're the same risks I think that are shared across any company in the United States, right? There's outside um, countries that want to steal intellectual property. There are people that just want to inject ransomware to steal some money. There are script kiddies. There are just random drive-bys that everybody has to deal with. For us, we are a data-driven company. I don't think that's a unique statement to make anymore, but we do work a lot with information. So information protection is one of our critical areas, data protection. So making sure that any compliance or regulated data is properly controlled and audited, and it's repeatable for that audit, and as well as just the other threats that are out there that come to anybody that's on the internet, right? So phishing, vishing, um, you know, vulnerabilities in operating systems, vulnerabilities in applications, vendors that we have to meet with, third-party risks that we have to deal with, partners, potential fourth parties that could be a risk to not just the company itself, but also where the information goes. So it's a huge orb of connections that we have to keep tabs on. It's not just the easiness of server, network, internet. Now it's okay, the business itself. How does that work, and where does the data go within the business, and where does it need to go outside of the business?
Okay, so that's a lot, actually. That's a lot to have on your plate. And I see you've gone a little bit grayer since I last talked to you. So it's
It's called
obviously
distinguished.
it's distinguished. Yeah. It sounded to me like a bigger threat in a lot of ways was really just being out of compliance from the way you phrased some of that, right? Is your data, you have to protect it, you have to make sure it's meeting all the requirements. I mean, how do you even deal with all of that? Do you have lots of consultants? Do you have a large internal team that helps to kind of make sure you're keeping your data within in its the proper wrapper where it is not going places it shouldn't go? Like, how are you handling that?
So we do have an internal compliance team that helps identify the data and the controls that need to be put in place. But I think overall everything's just going to be a risk rating, right? So and a risk appetite. So with data that is regulated in compliance, there's a zero risk for being out of compliance, right? So there has to be controls put in place, data properly categorized, properly tracked. But stuff that maybe is more marketing focused or public data, right? We're a little bit have a stronger risk appetite, right? So if it goes out or goes to a platform, that's kind of intended, so we don't need to track it, monitor it, see what's going on. But on the flip side, data that we don't create but has our logo, right? That other avenue of people potentially putting out false information. There's a risk that everybody has to deal with right now. Any publicly traded company, that if a random threat actor comes on Twitter and says, I have compromised X company, right? That now starts an investigation internally. Well, is that true? And that can directly affect a stock price, even if it's not true, right? Because now it's public information and people can potentially make decisions on that information before we can even get ahead of that, because we are consuming it at the speed that everybody else is consuming it at. So
Wow.
it's again, the risk, the data, where it's coming from and who's creating it. It's just something that we need to be aware of.
And is of all of the risks, is that what which one keeps you up the most at night? Is it that false sort of threat? Is it, or is it just everything? I mean, I'm curious, like, what is it?
It's a lot, right? Ransomware obviously is big in the news right now. There's been some San Diego companies that are equivalent to us that have recently gotten hit. And they've done everything that they're supposed to be doing, right? They had the MSSP, they have the EDR protection, they have oversight, they have teams, they have the logs, everything that you should have been doing to be deemed a competent and respectable cybersecurity team falters when one end user has access to a random website, puts in their credentials, and then those credentials are used internally, right? There's just a lot to keep tabs on, and ransomware is just one of those that, if you get hit, it's a potential business ending event, right? If there aren't proper controls or capabilities to be able to recover from that. So we're focusing on making sure that we as a company are aware, but we're also working within the healthcare community through different information sharing communities like HISOC, where we have an open Slack with companies that could be considered competitors, but we're just talking about, hey, I've seen this threat, I've seen this IOC, I'm seeing these hashes come through. Do with this information what you think you need to do, but that information sharing aspect is pretty key for the community.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. That's great that you guys are willing to do that, and it's better for everyone overall, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing for fun?
Focus a lot on family. So, trying to get my son to surf a little bit more, get him excited about sports, playing video games together. Same thing with my daughter. Just spending time with them and doing the best I can as a dad, and putting those boundaries up between work time and family time. Because if not, then work can slowly creep into everything, and I definitely don't want that to take over time with the family.
Well, that's great that you can try to put up that barrier, right? I'm sure
Yeah.
there's times, especially if there's a major threat or major disaster, that you're going to have to get pulled away. I do really want to thank you so much for joining this little impromptu podcasty thing. It's just so interesting to talk to folks that have really, made their careers in security or in something else interesting, and you've really done quite a bit now that you're chief director, head of all these things, whatever. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. Super fun to chat. I could probably chat with you forever. And any final thoughts from you, Mr. Brewer?
No, Travis, I appreciate the time, man. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, and look forward to talking some more later.
Awesome.